Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to MotorWeek podcast number 158. And around our table in Studio C at MotorWeek World headquarters today is writer-producer Brian Robinson.
Hello, John.
Our road test producer, Ben Davis.
Dude.
Our assistant producer, Greg Carlos.
Yes.
And our writer extraordinaire, Garrick Zeiken.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Glad you could make it upstairs. We have a lightning round, a viewer question, a little rant and rave section. We'll see. You know, I don't, Garrick, you've never contributed to rant and raves yet. Have you got a rant and rave?
I can't. We're all here. You can't talk about it to our face.
I like driving. I like all the cars you let me drive, so nothing to rant about.
It's supposed to be about other people. Other people.
Okay, driving in the left lane if you're not at least doing...
Save it.
Okay.
All right. So we'll get it. We got him thinking. All right. We cars that we're going to talk about. We've got a couple of cars that we recently tested during our winter testing stint down in Georgia, and a couple of other vehicles that we've seen at launches recently. Let's start with the 2017 Dodge Viper VooDoo II, the last, supposedly, again, of the Viper lineup.
Farewell.
This is the ACR, but this is the VooDoo version of it. Comments? Beast? Hate to see it go? What?
The VooDoo II edition is basically just a blacked out version of the ACR with every ACR option added onto it.
Airfoil and ground effects.
Yeah, it's incredible on track. The Viper's finally turned itself into an amazing track car that can get by as a street car if it needs to.
I really hope that there is a plan to bring it back again, even though it probably won't be nearly the same car that it is now. You know, that's become almost an icon. I mean, they basically have set themselves up. It took Corvette decades to do what they did with the Viper as far as make it popular and have that growing fan base. Greg, you drove the car a lot.
I did, and it's surely amazing. I mean, it's similar to the ACR we had last year. I think I do prefer the ACR we had last year, just solely for the color. We had a red with black stripes. This one was blacked out. It didn't look that great in my opinion, but it's an animal on the track. It's really, really intimidating. Probably the most intimidating car I've ever driven. It's like we've talked about before. It has that fear wall with it's such a high downforce car that you have to go faster to get more performance out of it, which is hard to do. I don't know if I ever quite got to that level.
Did you break through it?
No, absolutely not. I had a hard enough time getting into the right gear, honestly, which Robinson made a good comment to me. It was like basically just go forward and backwards and it'll put you in the right gear. I still wasn't quite comfortable doing that because it's a super, super tight shifter. Right. But that was my main problem with it. Other than that, it's an incredible car.
You know, it's going to be one of the last V10 cars ever. Yeah, and is there anything special that we're going to miss? I mean, 10 is not your normal group of four number that everybody thinks about in powertrains.
Certainly, that's a pushrod car, right? Certainly,
the
last pushrod.
Yeah,
because we'll still have
Lamborghinis to say, well, at least for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, was there anything? Did you ever notice anything particularly special besides the sound, which sometimes was great and sometimes it wasn't?
Yeah, it was a like it or love it. It was a love it or hate it kind of sound. I personally didn't love the sound coming out of that V10. I don't know.
Torque-wise, just feels like a stronger V8 or what?
That's a good question. I don't know. In a lot of ways, I'm an 8-cylinder pushrod kind of guy over a pushrod 10. Not to take anything away from Viper, I'll surely miss it if it leaves. But I don't know. There was just something about that 10 that never really struck a good chord with me. But I'm sure somebody's got a more positive experience with it.
No, I mean, I think the 10-cylinder is not what made the Viper special. Just the overall feel
made it unique.
Yeah,
but that's about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's pretty quick off the line though. What do we get? It's high threes or low threes to 60. Right?
Yeah, it was like a low threes.
Low threes. I mean, that's
quick. The car was easier to hook up than most of the past Vipers we've had.
Well, when they added launch control with this gen, it helped out a lot. It's still a crazy, insane experience, though.
Yeah. Did you enjoy driving it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, it is.
We also had the Camaro ZL1 there. Would you say totally different driving experience? Any comparisons?
Well, I would say the ZL1, you drive it for 3 or 4 laps, and you're pretty comfortable in it, and then you really start pushing. The Viper you can drive for 4 days, and you're still not comfortable with it, but you just keep pushing, trying to find
fun.
Right. You try to find where that limit is, and you never get to it. You just keep pushing, but you never feel comfortable. At least I never do. Mm-hmm. They're still insane.
Agreed.
Here with a car with that much downforce, if you lose it, it's all over, dude. That's kind of in the back of your mind.
I think we need to do like a moment of silence for the Viper until it eventually comes back. Maybe as a Terminator edition. When's
Well,
the 30 year?
who knows? The rumors were rampant that it was going to come back based on an Alpha chassis, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Of course, nobody does.
I don't think I'd mind to see it come back more of a GT, high-performance daily driver car instead of such a insane vehicle like that that you can only really get close to its limits on a track with.
Another car that we had at Roebling, and one we actually talked about briefly on our the podcast before this, the Nissan GT-R Track Edition. Brian Robinson, bring us up to date on how this is different, changed, how it's evolved. I mean, it's still basically speaking of beast, we use that word with the GT-R a lot.
Yeah, if you remember, I don't know, it was 4 or 5 years ago, they had a Track Edition version, just like a 1-year deal. Similar to that, it's the Nismo suspension, brakes, all the Nismo upgrades without the engine upgrade that comes with the Nismo. So basically just a better handling GT-R. But it gets pretty updated for 17 system-wide all over the car. The exterior gets updated, interior. Big transformation of the interior, a lot less switchgear, bigger screen for infotainment, and a little more horsepower, but that's mainly to compensate for a bunch of additional sound deadening, stuff like that. They tried to kind of tame it down a little bit. Every other supercar out there or exotic is like daily driver in its simplicity and comfort. GT-R has never been like that. So
where do you put
it's
the
taking
GT-R?
a step in that direction. Oh, it's just noisy. There's all kind of unique noises.
Clicks,
smells like
bangs.
gas.
Yeah.
It gets hot in
does.
there.
All those things that we said about the first GT-R as far as this.
I did say gas.
You
too,
do say use the term
gas.
Frankenstein all the time.
That's a good clarification, actually.
Yeah, it's like part American muscle car, part Italian exotic, and part Asian economy car, all kind of
I've heard that before.
kind of stitched together, and it's still fun.
So let me ask the same question about that. Was it a fun experience? I mean, this car has obviously been evolving, although I wouldn't say it's evolved as much as the Viper has over
In
its
price,
life.
it has.
For sure.
Yeah.
Definitely kept up with the times, and maybe even ahead
So
of
like
them.
twice what the ZL1 was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
In price.
Well, like on track, I mean, it's just amazing amount of grips and all-wheel drive, and as low as it is, it's easy to get comfortable in there. It's almost similar to the NSX, feel to it. I think just flat gets around corners.
Mm-hmm. You wonder if this is it, or if they're ever going to do a completely redesign on the car from the ground up. I suppose if they did, it could lose all its character.
I bet it would be awesome. They've had so long to come up with a new one once they finally do.
I mean, most people don't even realize it's still available. Okay, 2 very rough around the edges cars that were an awful lot of fun to spend 4 days at a racetrack with. Switching gears completely, 2017 Jeep Compass. In case you've completely been in a hole somewhere, the original Compass, which was out for 10 years and was sold alongside the Patriot, and it was basically just a redone Dodge hatchback with all-wheel drive. Turned out to be, even though most of the press didn't like it, a very popular car with the public. Now it's been redone. It's now based on the same chassis as the Jeep Renegade and Fiat 500, L500L. Okay. Greg, you drove it. Better Jeep Compass. This is another of their world efforts to spread the Jeep gospel around the world. What'd you think?
Absolutely a better Jeep Compass compared to the last one, but honestly, that's not that hard.
I was going to say, is that a big improvement or not?
I mean, no, because the previous Compass didn't really do it for anybody. But no, if you're a fan of the Grand Cherokee and you want something a little bit smaller or cheaper, you're in luck, because this thing is basically a miniature Grand Cherokee. Exterior, interior, Jeep didn't mince words. They said, we looked at the Grand Cherokee and we used it as inspiration
rather
for
than
Compass.
The Cherokee.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And
so
it's
squarish.
And people have asked, is it going to take away from the Cherokee? And that remains to be seen. It is definitely smaller than the Cherokee. I mean, it's a small car. But it looks good, and it is more trail ready now. They have a Trailhawk version,
which
is
the
available.
original Compass and Patriot, they were not trail rated at all, and they basically later were, but they kind of got in trouble because it wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
Could you you could get a front wheel drive when they first came out?
Yeah,
back then, right?
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where does it fit? Where does the Renegade fit in there? Is that smaller still, or is this
Renegade's smaller?
Yeah, it is smaller.
It's a stretch.
It's kind of
Compass.
odd.
Yeah, it's a stretched Renegade chassis.
Okay.
Yeah, it is, and it's weird because when I looked at it, I kind of thought the Renegade just has those proportions where it looks bigger than the Compass, to me at least. I think the Compass holds its size. I mean, not that it's a big car, but I think it
doesn't look as big as it is.
Exactly.
Huh, really?
And it is. It's a nice looking package, and it is still front wheel drive base, but you can go 4-wheel drive. It is a 2.4 liter 2.4 liter Tiger Shark only. It's a global car, so it has a lot of different variants everywhere, and Garrick has done the research, so he actually probably has more of an idea of what's available overseas. But here you only get that 2.4 liter 6-speed manual, which is pretty cool. But you won't get that in the Trailhawk. 6-speed auto or 9-speed auto.
So it's the same engine here that the Renegade has.
Correct.
And so that probably means it's going to be a little bit slower.
It is. It's really anemic off the line. It's kind of loud, but they're going for efficiency here, and it's pretty efficient. I think the front-wheel drive version with the manual gets 26 combined, and then it'll drop down to just 25 if you go 4x4, 4x4 with a 9-speed automatic.
Jeep's killing it right now. They'll probably sell a bunch of them.
They will.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think
just
it'll be
talking
a big
about how
success.
they always show up in the bottom of those reliability studies, but man, Jeep is just selling everything they can put out there right now.
It is Chrysler right now. Chrysler, Fiat, Chrysler in this country.
Yeah, those Renegades come in through Baltimore, and I always see them. I mean, just trucks full of them getting hauled out.
And they're going to build this thing in what, Garrett? 4 plants?
4 plants around the world.
We're going to get ours from Mexico.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right. And Greg's right. It's a global car. It's 17 different powertrains.
17 different powertrains.
options. And they're targeting 100 markets. So, it's a big deal for them. It really is.
Another vehicle, we've been talking a lot about SUVs or crossovers or whatever you want to call utilities. Garrick, you just recently came back from a vehicle that's already stirred up quite a bit of controversy. It's the new Kia Niro,
Yes.
which is Kia's first dedicated hybrid platform, i.e. it's like the Prius. It's designed from the ground up to be a hybrid. Now, they're going to do more than one version of it. They're going to do a hybrid and a plug-in hybrid, or
Plug-in hybrid is coming.
Yeah.
Right now, it's just the hybrid.
But they didn't say anything about doing a pure electric, right?
Not yet.
Okay. So the controversy that is surrounding it, I should save this for our next segment. We're going to talk about this in our lightning round.
Nice.
But I always looked at the Niro thinking it's a hatchback, but that's not what they said, right?
No, they refer to it as a crossover.
Why? Why do you think? Why did they do that? Just because crossovers are
Answer the
popular?
question, Garrett.
Come on,
Why?
Garrett.
What did they tell you?
Well, they did a lot of research, and they
And it came up that crossovers
So
sell
have you.
and
I've heard-
hatchbacks
I've
don't.
heard you've done
They
some
put it
too,
into a
so
computer
come
and
on.
it came out
They're
crossover.
fitting it in between the electric and hybrid cars and the CUVs. So it's kind of in a niche there. Within their lineup, it's between the Soul and the Sportage.
Now, the Soul has a long history of being called an urban
Right.
utility.
Right.
And that's what they're calling this
right,
as well.
that's what they refer to this as
Even
well.
though it doesn't have any all-wheel drive.
No. But
All right.
that was a consideration for space. that did come up during the presentation, and it was a space saving.
So, what did you think of the vehicle? I mean, it's kind of like, what is it? Where does it fit? Give us your impressions on driving, especially since in the hybrid version is really almost has the market to itself in a way.
Right. Well, I liked driving it. You sit up higher and noticeably, which I think is going to be a big selling point for it.
That's a utility thing.
Correct. Ground clearance, it's about half an inch higher than the Sport. I mean the Soul, but about half an inch lower than the Sportage all-wheel drive.
So it can take less potholes.
Correct. The engine and the motor, it was seamless when they were going back and forth. Transmissions, 6-speed dual clutch, very smooth.
So it's got a real transmission in it.
I like dual clutch.
Right.
That's good.
Right.
Does Toyota still make the Prius V, which is essentially what this vehicle is?
Yeah, it still does. Yeah, it is basically a Prius V competitor. Yeah, that's a good point.
I liked it. It was simple once you got in there to figure out where everything was, and you could just go. It was nice to drive. It was nimble, 139 horsepower combined. I thought was fine. Mileage, they're saying up to 50 miles an hour.
So that's fully competitive.
Right, right, exactly. And you really noticed that in the city. We drove it in the city and then out in a more country setting. So, mileage in the city is going to be better. But I liked it. I liked it, and I think the fact that it has room makes it appealing. I think it's good timing for Kia with the interest in crossovers.
Yeah.
So that appeals to that. And then with the high mileage, depending on how cynical you are about gas prices staying around $2.15 a gallon, this could be very, very appealing.
I don't know anybody that owns a Prius that's unhappy. They all love their gas mileage. When you looked at it, when you saw it in person, I've seen it at the auto shows, obviously.
Right.
When you're standing at street level with it, and that's where the difference makes, did you feel that it looked like a utility more than, say, a hatchback? Was there anything there? If you walked up to it and you put yourself in somebody who had never seen it before, what do you think they'd think it looked like?
I would say more of a utility because of the fenders, the roof racks, the design of the lighting. It has a little bit more of an aggressive look. The not being all-wheel drive is a point that some of the people I was listening to brought up as far as, is it a crossover or not?
That gets us right into what we were going to talk about
Great
today
transition, Gary.
on our lightning round. That's a perfect transition.
Lightning round.
What makes, right now, let's face it, if you call yourself a car, you're not going to sell very many. If you call yourself a utility, or a crossover, you're probably going to do okay. The Soul was the first one I can think of that played that game, although, as Brian mentioned, the Prius V basically does the same, although I don't know if they've ever called it a utility.
No, they call it for what it is, a front-wheel drive, wagon-y hatchback.
Yeah. So the question I've got is, what is a utility anymore? Is there, has it gotten so that no matter what they call it, if it doesn't look like a swoopy car, it's okay? Or what in your mind is a utility? I'm old-fashioned. To me, it basically has to have some kind of an all-wheel drive system available.
Or at least ground clearance.
Or at least ground clearance to go over something, other than a pothole. But I leave it to you. What do you guys think is a crossover or utility anymore?
When I hear the word, I also associate that ruggedness to it. I feel like it should have some sort of ground clearance. But if I really boil it down to the word utility and I think about it, I mean, it's got to be able to do a lot of different things. It's got to be versatile. I would say to me, it's got to sit noticeably higher than a car, a sedan. It has to have a hatch, should have some all-wheel drive system. I agree with you on that. And noticeably more cargo than a hatchback car.
I mean, in other words, being a bit squarish.
Right.
I think we're one of the few people that still differentiate crossovers from SUVs. I mean, almost everyone
has given
considers, a front-wheel drive-based SUV-ish looking vehicle. They'll call it an SUV, even though it's a crossover. So, we just keep diluting it further and further down the line.
Yeah, I know. We do. I tend to use the word, which is a cop-out, utility, because it is getting so terribly confusing. Benny, any comments?
Everything that Greg said, and I really didn't think about it till Garrick said it, but roof racks. I mean, if the thing doesn't have roof racks, I wouldn't consider it a utility. Mm-hmm. But I mean,
you can put roof racks on anything.
Definition. Yeah, well, I mean,
sometimes, but at least they're designed in.
You could put roof racks on the Optima, on a Camaro.
You can.
I guess you could, but all right, I think it comes with roof racks. I hear utility.
At least the rear-wheel drive.
I think of a guy putting a mountain bike in the back of it, so it's got to have some kind of level of easy cleaning ability and stuff like that.
The first thing Garrett said was, you sit high in it. And I think to the public, to the average person getting in it, that's a key thing.
Sure it is.
Well, so are minivans. Sit high minivans. What are they?
They hate minivans.
Right. Let's just start calling them crossovers too.
Well, I'm surprised somebody has it.
Let's call them family utility vehicles.
If they came out with another minivan that had all-wheel drive, if Toyota updates its, maybe they will call it a crossover.
All right, I had to be the bell guy today.
That's good.
Patrick's out buying kombucha.
Doing whatever. Actually, is he gone? No, he's here. Patrick Lucas, our producer, has not vacated us this afternoon. Any rant and raves that anybody has got on their minds about something?
I think we just got over one.
Yeah, all right. We do have a viewer question. John asks, and it's not me. Are there any vehicles, it might be me, are there any vehicles out there that still offer a split bench style type of front seat and don't have a center console? I'm a tall guy, and I can't get comfortable in many vehicles. All right, I did some research. The last car that you could buy new with a bench seat in this country was a 2013 Chevrolet Impala. Yeah. And now you're down to pickup trucks and big SUVs like Tahoes and Suburbans. Yeah. Why do you think bench seats went away?
Safety.
Explain that.
Well, everything's based around the airbags and the belt, and they need you to be locked in one position to be as safe as possible. If you're in a bench and you're not sitting exactly the right spot, your airbags aren't going to work the way they should. And
frankly, pretty hard to put an airbag in the middle of a car, too.
Yeah, I mean, we're noticing that more and more. They want you to be locked in one particular position.
Fortunately, you can still, John, get them in a variety of pickup trucks, and you don't have to spend the $70,000 that a lot of the pickup trucks we get in to test are. But that or a Suburban, or else go buy yourself a 2013 Chevrolet Impala. It's probably not very expensive, and I imagine you can find plenty.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably get a good deal on it. Hope that answers your question, and that brings us to a close for our MotorWeek podcast, number 158. Ouch. Thanks, everybody here that participated today. It was a good show. Brian Robinson, Ben Davis, Greg Carlos, and Zarek Zeiken.
Zarek
ZZ Top is what we call him.
ZZ Top.
I think I just got a little cooler.
Zarek Zeiken.
All right. I have been calling Garrett I've been mispronouncing his name since the day he walked in the front door.
Just call him G.
No, I didn't do too bad today.
Den
our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood, who always makes us sound great. Our podcast creator, Bob Mixter. Our producer, as I mentioned, Patrick Lucas, and our podcast video editor, even though this was not a video show, Joe Ligo. We should have had that on the last one, Joe. Thanks, everybody, for being a part of us. Remember, you can always catch MotorWeek on public television stations around the country and on the cable network Velocity. Till next time, I'm John Davis. For all of us at MotorWeek, thanks for being a part of the MotorWeek experience.
Zarek Zeiken.
You've been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com, RockAuto.com, and State Farm. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series, each week on your local PBS station.